This class is brought to you by LA Care and Blue Shield Promise. Hello, my name is Charmaine Vega, also known as Mamavega. This class is brought to you by LA Care and Blue Shield Promise Community Resource Centers. The centers are a place to help you stay active, healthy, and informed. We hope you enjoyed this virtual class. Today's class is Improve Brain-Gut Connection in Children and Adults. What is the brain-gut connection? Well, we always think about that our brain is what's controlling our body and telling us what to do. And even when we get hungry, sometimes we think, oh, well, I feel hungry, my stomach is growling, it's doing all that. Well, the truth of the matter is that science has determined that we have two brains. We have a brain that's in the skull, and we also have our gut is also considered our second brain. And the reason for that is because there are 100 million nerve cells in our stomach or gut, depending on what you want to call it, and it's sending messages constantly between our brain as well as in our gut. They're kind of going back and forth between each other, and sometimes they're in conflict. Our brain may say, oh, I want to eat, and I shouldn't eat, and our stomach is growling, telling us, yes, you want to eat. And depending on what you have in your stomach is what's now sending that information to your brain to make you think that you want to eat or you have to eat. And so there's that constant battle that's going on between the brain and the gut and this one and that one. And we're totally confused, which is why we're trying to figure out, should we eat this or should we not eat it? What's really going on? Why are we trying to decide what we should and should not do? And that's like two people talking to you. One's whispering in one ear and the other one is whispering in the other ear, and you're trying to figure out the good, the bad, what should I do, what shouldn't I do? In this presentation, what I'm going to try to do is give you a little bit of insight into what's going on, and hopefully it will help you. You see where it's sending messages? Those messages are going one way. Then those messages go back the other way. So it's keep on going back and forth. So let's see if I can't help you out with some of this and lend a little bit of clarification to it. Let's take a look at this picture. In this picture, I want you to consider that what you have as your spine. Let's look at your spine. Your spine, which goes down here. There's all kinds of neurons and veins and everything that's going through here. You can see all of these that's going around here. So what I want you to do is I want you to look at the fact that you have everything is coming from the brain and it's going way down here and it's going down into your stomach. But if we go back up here, we can see that it's also going over here. And you see this is our stomach right here. You see this is our stomach. So that is sending messages. So when we eat something, it sends it into here, and then it goes back over to here, and then it goes back up to the brain. And we're constantly going back and forth and round all the time. And it's like, which one is telling me what to do? But these are like your highways going up and down. These are the highways. And the highway just doesn't go one way. It goes one way, then it goes back. Depending on what you put over here in your stomach, you put this in your stomach, well, you have a closed circulatory system. Because you have a closed circulatory system, it's not only going back to your brain, but it's going all throughout your body. You have it going down here, then you have it going down to your other one, then you also have it where it's going down here. So you have it going all over your body. So when you eat food, that food is going throughout your entire body and it's feeding your entire body, but it's also feeding your brain. And that's what we want to look at. We want to look at how is it feeding your brain? What is it telling your brain? And what is your brain telling your stomach? Why should you care about this connection? As I just finished presenting in the past two pictures, we have chemicals that are going between back and forth, sending those messages, and we want to make sure it's sending the right message. That's what we want to make sure that we're doing. Therefore, if you're angry, you're sad, you're depressed, and you hear doctors and everybody tell you, oh, you have to balance your hormones, or, what did you eat? Why did you eat this food? What is that doing to you? You may have a reaction. Your stomach may feel a certain way. All of those kind of things have an impact on what happens in your brain. You will also hear about brain fog, all those kind of things. That's what's doing it. It's because your stomach is absorbing food or not absorbing, and even if it is absorbing something, it's sending it to your brain, and it may not necessarily be the right thing that you want. So again, why should you care about this connection? Why? Why do you think you need to care about it? Because we need to focus on the gut. We have to focus on our gut, how it impacts everything. Your gut has bacteria and viruses in it, but we need to make sure that it's the right ones, because they can either impact your brain positively or negatively. We want to make sure that it's impacting your brain in a positive way. So poor nutrition and gut issues can show up as depression, stress, anxiety. You can have Alzheimer's, you can have anything, for your muscles. All those kind of things can show up. So sometimes people will say, oh, it's just in your head. Well, it probably is. You might have eaten something and it put the wrong thing in your head. So it's going through your system. They just don't necessarily know that that's really what's going on. But oftentimes that is what's going on. Let's take a look at some foods that can improve your gut flora. The foods that can improve your gut flora are your prebiotics. You always hear so much information about probiotics, but you don't hear very much about prebiotics. Prebiotics are just as important, and in my opinion, they're actually more important than the probiotics, because the prebiotics are like the dietary fiber, that thicker stuff, and it feeds the good bacteria. So if you don't have enough of the food and the minerals and nutrients, and it's kind of like a fertilizer. If you don't fertilize your plant, it's not going to grow. Well, it's the same thing in your stomach. You have to fertilize the good bacteria so that you get more good bacteria than you do the bad bacteria. If you have too much bad bacteria, that's when you get illnesses and sicknesses, and they talk about, well, you need to balance your pH. Well, that's because you don't have enough of the good bacteria that's going to become the fertilizer and the food for the probiotics. So the prebiotics are actually your fertilizer for your probiotics. That's what you need to look at. We have some things that are called gut disruptors, and we have other things that are good for your body. Let's take a look at what the difference is between them. Okay, the gut disruptors, and the reason we call them gut disruptors is because what they're doing is they're doing stuff that prevents your good flora from growing the way it needs to grow. And not all of these are 100% bad for you. It's a matter of how they are. So corn, you hear a lot about, them saying corn, oh, corn, which kind of corn it is. And that's because 88% of glyphosate. And what is glyphosate? Glyphosate is actually banned, okay, in 38 countries. But what it is, it's Roundup. Glyphosate is a fancy word for saying Roundup. Sugar. Sugar makes bad stuff grow more in your stomach. That's why they talk about reduce the amount of sugar that you have. You shouldn't be eating as much sugar, or you shouldn't eat things that turn into sugar. Okay. However, some of these other things that may cause weight gain, let's just look at potatoes, and it's because of the amount of starch that's in the potatoes that may do it. Or if some of these foods have chemicals on them, that's why they talk about the dirty dozen. Remember, whatever goes into your stomach is what's actually feeding the bacteria or not feeding the bacteria or doing something bad, right? So if you have vegetables that you're eating and it has a lot of bacteria or it has a lot of chemicals on it, that's going into your system, and that's now feeding that fertilizer or destroying the fertilizer, we should say that, because remember, you're putting a chemical in there that's doing it. The same thing when you have a lot of pills that you may be taking and antibiotics. I do know that people have to take certain medications and certain things of that nature, but understand that it is changing the flora in your stomach. So you can always ask your doctor, okay, if I'm taking this, what vegetables can I eat? Because the vegetables that are healthier for you are going to be those that will make the flora in your stomach create the fertilizer, which would be your prebiotics, and they're creating the flora, they're creating the fertilizer for your probiotics. So let's take a look at that. Okay, if you want to lose weight, also you want to eat more fiber, right? Because that's what they say, eat more fiber. So prebiotics are the food for the probiotics. So that can be things like oat and chicory, asparagus, garlic, onions, leek, dandelion, bananas, apples, jicama, cabbage. There's tons of them that you can actually eat because these have a tougher type of fiber to break down, and that's why they become the fertilizer. They're a bit tougher. It's harder for your stomach to break them down, or the probiotics to break them down is what it is. But that becomes your fertilizer. So you want the good stuff in there. There are a lot of people who say, well, I don't like vegetables and I don't want to eat vegetables. But if you know the real reason you should be eating vegetables is because it's keeping your stomach and your gut healthy, which is also going to keep your brain healthy, which is what you want to do. Okay, here we go. Feed your gut. Look at all these things that you can have that's going to actually feed your gut. You have the squash, you have the nuts, tomatoes, you have a little bit of chili pepper. Chili pepper also, it acts as a catalyst. And what that does, the chili peppers are kind of like the choo-choo train, if you want to look at it that way. It takes the food to the site where it's most needed. That's what it will do. It's a catalyst for you. It also stimulates your system to burn up more of the food and stuff that's in it. But all of these things are things that you can use that's going to be the prebiotics. Beans can be another thing, provided with the beans you soak them so that what you do is you get rid of some of the starches. In my case, what I do with my beans is I soak mine for 2 days. 2 days, you hear me. What I do is I put them in a pot, put them with hot water, cover that, and just set it on the counter. And then what happens is it ends up foaming, and then I take that foam off, rinse it with cold water so that I get all the foam off. Then I put it in some hot water again, leave it on the counter, let it start fermenting. This is called pre-germination because it's not sprouting yet, but it can. You don't have to, the only beans I don't do that with would be something like my lentils or my peas, because those will cook. I don't have to soak them as many days because they cook faster, but all the other beans I do. After you soak them for that while, now what you're going to do is then you drain them off, then you start them to cook. So on the second day you can cook them, and you've gotten rid of like a lot of that bad starch. And when you start to cook them, what's going to happen? You're just going to get way more foam. You keep skimming all that foam off because that's the stuff that's really bad for your gut, which is why you will have flatulence, which is another way of saying gas. Okay. And so you're going to scoop all that off. And once you have no more foam that's foaming up, now you can start adding your seasoning, with the exception of salt, because salt can make them toughen up again. The same thing goes for when you're going to eat nuts. Nuts should also be soaked, and what you can do with your nuts is you can put them in the refrigerator in some water and let them soak, and then when you want to eat them, you take them out of the water, but you would be changing that water on a daily basis. Only put enough nuts in for you to have each day, and you only need about 1 ounce per day because you're going to get the protein, but you want your body to be able to digest those nuts just like we did with the beans. And what that does is by soaking them, it makes them softer and easier for your body to digest. And we also have in this picture, we have some onions, we have some garlic over there, and that also helps to kill both viral and bacterial that may be growing, in your stomach. So it's always a good idea to try to add that. Leeks are the same thing. It's from that same type of family. So if you can add those things into your food, and you do see that we do have some bread on here. We do have, a little bit of bread. right here we have the bread. Thank you very much. So thank you so much for joining me. We look forward to seeing you virtually again next week and at one of our resource centers as soon as we can. Until then, stay active, healthy, and informed. Here's an important message that I would like for you to be aware of. All information, content, and material of this video is for informational purposes only and are not intended to serve as a substitute for the consultation, diagnosis, and/or medical treatment of a qualified physician or healthcare provider. The information contained on this video is compiled from a variety of sources and is not considered complete. Information is subject to change without notice. If you have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. I'd like to give credit to the people where I got my pictures from. They are royalty free. I do have a membership so that I can use these, so I'm not going against any type of copyright. Even though they are copywritten, I have paid for them, so I do have permission in order for me to use them. And again, I want to thank you very much.